Northeast is the call to make. Whether you're buying your first home or you're a seasoned investor, Terry Kalakos and his team of mortgage and real estate brokers can help. It's simple and it's free. Make your dreams come true. Call Northeast.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're listening to The Real Estate Show. I'm your super host, Terry Kalakos, chartered real estate and mortgage broker extraordinaire, as well as president of Northeast Real Estate and Mortgage Agency and Coldwell Banker Commercial Alliance. And today is part 2 of our Landlord special, where we're going to be focusing on what you need to know as a landlord this time of year. Joining me, we have my beautiful co-host, Mirav Marciano, chartered real estate mortgage broker and vice president of Northeast and CBC Alliance. What's going on?
Nothing much. I'm a little confused. So today you're the super host.
I'm the super host today.
And the president extraordinaire.
I was about to say
the co-host.
I was gonna say I'm the hostess with the mostest, but I can't.
You're the host with the most.
The host. I don't know. Whatever.
That's fine.
Whatever. And he's listen. Sometimes we need to pat ourselves on the back.
You're right. You're right. You are a super host and you are extraordinaire.
Well, I didn't go there, but thank you for the compliment. And we're going to be also continuing last week's discussion about whether or not it's me or Mirav that's usually right. So
yes, well, I don't think anybody needs to send us any messages about that. We both know who's right.
Exactly. Please feel free to call us at the office at 514-680-4674. As well, you can visit us online at www.nordest.ca. You could also visit us online at facebook.com/Northeast Nordest and facebook.com/CBC Alliance Quebec. And again, if you haven't done so already, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is
newsonthego.ca.
newsonthego.ca. There you go.
Nice.
Which eventually I will change that name.
Yes, you keep on saying that. But
I know. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But anyways, it will happen. Yeah, exactly.
Last week we talked about being a landlord.
What a great show last week. Okay, so I got so much positive feedback. First and foremost, the amount of people that reached out to me and they were like, "Oh my God, they were on the floor cracking up with our show last week," which was very informative and very good. But we didn't actually get a chance to really talk about all the stuff that we really wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, being a landlord.
Being a landlord. And being a landlord comes with a lot of responsibilities. Obviously, we know this, right? You have people's literally their lives in your hands to a certain degree. Although it's a home for a tenant, the property is in fact a business to the landlord. And we can't forget that.
I think that's an important point because, yes, and I know that a lot of tenants, it really rubs them the wrong way when we mention that real estate or an investment property is a business for a landlord. It is a business. And for a tenant, it's their home. So you've got an emotional side, which is the home. Yeah. And then for the landlord, it is a business, which of course they have an emotional side as well, where they have to take care of it and all that.
Yeah. And there was a couple of text messages that came in last week towards the tail end of the show, which I actually didn't get to. I answered them kind of like on the side afterwards. One of them was actually from Karen, who had actually said, landlords are just people that have a lot of money that buy real estate. It was something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what the question was.
It was
or what
regarding
the
the
comment
new tax. So it was basically they're taxing the rich.
They're taxing the rich, exactly. The reality in many cases is actually so far from that it's, we don't have to go anywhere else. Let's look in this room, right? Let's look at the first property that I ever bought. And we've talked about this. I was 24 years old. I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. Mm-hmm. I had enough that I had gotten for the down payment. And I ended up buying this 4-plex in Hochelaga Maisonneuve, which I ended up living in, right? So the reason why I bought that building was so that the tenants and myself can actually, they would help me live, if you will. I wasn't rich. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a ton of disposable income, nothing like that. But buying that property helped me accumulate what I actually needed. And I still have that property, and I still have, one of the tenants that's in that building is still one of my original tenants, that probably they were there from even before I owned the property. So you got to remember that at the end of the day, not all landlords, I'm now speaking to the tenants out there, right? Not all landlords are bad. And now I'm going to speak to the landlords, because landlords also have this misconception about tenants, that all tenants are bad. And they're not, right? At the end of the day, we have to remember we're all a bunch of humans living on this planet together, cohabitating, and we are here to support each other and help each other, right? And whether you're a landlord and tenant, the most important thing, and this is something that I've always talked about, you need to make sure that you're always maintaining this dialogue, right? You need to make sure that you're maintaining a dialogue between yourself and your landlord. And as long as you have that, you're good to go.
I think it's basically, it comes down to mutual respect. The landlord has to respect the space of the tenant and, provide what needs to be provided. The tenant has to respect the landlord and do their share as well. So I think if there's a mutual respect there and everybody's doing their share.
And an understanding. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But let's look at it. Okay. So now saying what we just said.
Yeah.
We do have to remember that there are a lot of things that a landlord does have to think about.
Yeah, like basically you have to respect the law.
Sure, yeah.
It's a basic thing, but at the end of the day, landlords and tenants both have to respect the law. You can't, create a grow up in there. You can't, if you're going to have a hair salon, you're sort of, not really respecting the rules.
You're violating, depending on, maybe if it's been authorized, for sure. But
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's different things. You have to keep the property in good condition, of course, and have proper insurance, whether it's the landlord or the tenant. So there's little things like that are really important. They're so basic, but they're so important.
And that's a huge misconception. I'm just like, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Misconception.
It's my presence.
Yeah, I know. I'm stumbling, I was going to say something. Anyways, I was going to say something really dumb there. But anyways, I'm holding back. There's this misconception that exists about insurance. Mm-hmm. That's actually something that, tenants believe that they're going to go into a property and they don't need to have anything. They don't need insurance. They don't need this. They don't need that. The truth is so much further than that. You do need tenants insurance when you go in there. And it's actually one of the things that I oblige my tenants to actually provide me whenever they move into a property. So the minute they sign a lease, I say, I also would like a copy of your tenant's insurance.
Yeah, because the landlord's insurance will not cover the belongings of the tenant inside, etc. So definitely tenant insurance is really important.
And we've had cases where tenants have forgotten windows open in the winter, shut off heating, and their property basically ended up becoming flooded because of,
So that definitely covered the renovations, but not the items of the tenant.
That's it. Exactly. The other thing that we have to also remember, that rent price is always based on the highest rental rate in the last 2 years for that unit, right?
I think that's an important one for landlords. And, it is based on the TAL, the Tribunal Administratif de Logement. I'm still getting used to that name. You have to follow the rules. And
that's part of the letter of the law that we were kind of talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of rules and conditions that you have to follow. You have to. It is part of being a landlord.
At the end of the day, yeah, absolutely. We have, when we're looking at, rental increases, okay? When we're looking at rental increases, Marav is concerned about the time here. She's like pointing at her watch here, and she's like, what's going on?
And I'm like, clock. I'm a little.
Yeah, I'm like, don't worry about the time. I've got the time. She keeps pointing at her clock, like, are we over our time here? Anyways,
screening tenants.
So when we're looking at screening tenants, okay, what's something that you've seen that's been successful? Because for me, I've always opted to make sure that I do things properly, but why don't you go ahead?
Definitely, I would make tenants fill out an application to get to know a little bit about them, about their job history, etc. I've seen a lot of landlords also choose to do a credit verification as well as a background check. And you can have all kinds of companies help you with that, whether it's through companies like Corpic, etc., or direct companies like Proprio Enquête help out with that a lot. And I would do a quick check to see if they've ever been in the tribunal and had issues with other landlords.
When we come back, we're going to be looking at rental increases and how high can you go. You're listening to The Real Estate Show, and today we have our Landlord Special, Part 2, where all your questions as a landlord can be answered. Feel free to call us at the office at 514-680-4674 or visit us online at www.nordest.ca. And of course, if you haven't done so already, take a moment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is newsonthego.ca. Also,
yes,
you can listen to us on Spotify, on iTunes, on Amazon, so all the podcasting. And on SoundCloud. SoundCloud. And iHeartRadio, of course. Right?
Yes, that's true. Straight on the iHeartRadio website.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Just if you go on Spotify, do me a favor, please. Don't judge me based on my playlists. I like rap music, so there's like a whole whatever. Yeah. Anyways.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't judge me on that.
No, nobody's judging. Everybody's allowed to listen to whatever music you like. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Please.
So we're at the end of the year. Well, at the end of the year, we're basically at the end of the fiscal year, if you want. It's that time of year. Taxes, slips.
Important deadlines are coming up. Yeah. Exactly.
So I think this is a good show about.
And the big one. The big one is the rental increases or the evictions, right? Rental increases have to occur, obviously. For me, people always ask me, theoretically, it's 3 to 6 months beforehand that you need to alert someone of a change in the state of the lease. Up to 3 months, you tend to be okay. I like to go a little bit more. So if the lease is up for renewal at the end of June, beginning of July, in our national moving holiday.
Yep, Canada Day. Yep.
Canada Day is, Quebec's
moving day.
Moving day. Okay. So I tend to do it before the 31st. So between Christmas and New Year's, whenever there's a rental increase or anything like that or any changes, that's when I actually send things out. And I give the tenants 30 days to respond. Most of the time they, I don't usually raise rents all that much, but when I do, that's the period that I do it. And I always suggest to landlords to do it at that point in time as well. That way you're getting enough of a runway in front of you so that in the event that there is any issues or any complications, you can actually fix it with the tenant. The other thing that you can do is actually have the conversation before you even send out the rental increase. So that way you know for sure that they're going to be accepting what you're sending.
And you touched on evictions. Now, evictions, you're talking about repossessing a dwelling for personal use or for a family member.
Yeah.
That's 6 months in advance, though.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So in the case where you need to repossess a dwelling for yourself or for a family member, then definitely 6 months before the renewal of the lease, this has to be done. It has to be done. Now, with respect to rental increases, everybody wonders, how high can you go?
So on the TAL's website or the Régie de Logement's website, however you want to call it, there is a form that you fill out, and there's basically calculations that you have to do. So you have to look and you say, okay, this is how much my property and school taxes and my expenses of the property were this year. This is how much they were the previous year. And there's a calcul that's basically done. I don't know where the French just came from.
Yeah, that's what I was
There's a calculation that basically has to occur. And then at the end, it'll tell you are permitted to raise the property, the actual rent by this much. It also factors in their renovations that you've done to the property and stuff like that. There's this misconception, and a lot of people think that if they do major renovations to a property or they change a kitchen, change a bathroom, something like that, they can go in and rent it for whatever they want afterwards. It's not the case. You still have to follow the guidelines of the TAL. If you're not going to, as a landlord, if you're not going to follow those guidelines, the actual tenant has the right to petition the TAL for a reduction of rent. And it's a dangerous game because what happens is a lot of times tenants will accept to pay the higher rent so that they can get into a unit, right? So imagine you basically have a unit that's being renovated.
Yeah, let's say it's $1,000 a month.
Yeah,
you fully renovate it. You rent it out for $1,500.
You rent it, yeah, exactly, $1,500, $1,600. Let's say you rent it out for $2,000. Okay, so I'm gonna go crazy. You say I've put in money in this. I want to recoup my money. I'm renting it out for $2,000. You didn't follow the calculation the way that you were supposed to. The tenant somehow finds out what the previous tenant was paying because you didn't mark it off properly, or you omitted something.
Yeah, because you're supposed to mark it in the lease.
What was the lowest rent that was paid in the last 2 years? What happens is at that moment, that tenant can petition the TAL for a rent reduction, and they will win.
Yes.
So you have to be very, very careful that everything that you're doing is above board.
Now, of course, new construction is an exception to this rule.
New construction,
So
if the unit has been vacant for a couple of years and you've done major renovations in or anything like that, that's a whole different animal. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about tenant leaves.
Yeah.
You go in, you do your renovations. 3 months later, you decide to rent it out for $1,000 more. You're going to end up having a problem. And we've actually seen, this was I don't know if you remember this, but we had a friend of ours who was renting a unit, and she went into the rental. She found out a year and a half later that the previous tenant was paying less. She went to the Régie de Logement, and the Régie de Logement basically forced the landlord to refund her all of that money for the year and a half. That extra.
That hurts.
Yes, it hurts. So basically, she ended up living there for free after, because the landlord didn't actually refund the money. He just said, okay, well, whatever, stay here for the next 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it was, for free.
Wow.
And the rent was reduced.
The other thing that I know, people who invest in condos, if there's a special assessment, that goes into your expenses as well, by the way.
That's right. Exactly.
So that's important to know. And once you do all that calculation, it gives you a number, and you send it to your tenant, and you say, as of the renewal of the lease, the rent will increase to this amount. You even go as far as including the sheet.
I include the sheet.
The
Absolutely.
calculations. Just to show them where this number comes from.
Absolutely. I include the sheet. I say, this is what it is. You like it? Great. You don't like it? At that point, they can't petition. When you have that sheet, so let's say that sheet says that you could increase it by 3%, as an example. If you increase it by 3%, no one's going to be able to argue that. You followed the guidelines exactly the way that they were supposed to be done. The problem comes in when those guidelines are not followed, and you say, well, it says 3, but I'm going to see if I can squeeze out 5. Right? Now, if you have the conversation with your tenant, and your tenant agrees to pay that extra amount for one reason or another, just like we have those, long-term tenants, and like I said, I'm the type of guy, I don't raise my rent every single year. But every so often, I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen, you guys are paying the same rent for the last, 3 years. We need to bump it up. How much, can you afford to increase it by? And they'll tell me, you know what, let's put it up $50, $60, $70, whatever it is. And they understand also. Again, you got to have that dialogue. If you don't have that dialogue, forget it. It's game over.
As long as you two agree, then we're good.
Exactly.
And now with respect to slips, Relevate 31.
The slips. The slips. I get the call every year from my mother. So my mother is the person that reminds me of the slips, because I have to prepare them for her building also. And she says to me, she's like, did you make the tax slips?
The taxes. The taxes.
So we're talking about the famous Relevé 31 slips, okay, which have to be provided to your tenants by the end of February, right? Theoretically. I'm not going to lie. I am late sometimes. They do come in March. And the whole purpose of those is so that the government is aware of who and what is living inside of a property.
Who and what?
Who? I was thinking dogs, but it's not.
I was following you up until the what.
Who is living inside the property, right? Okay. So they want to make sure that, and they want to know approximately, there's a whole calculation. So tenants are used to doing these. It's a very simple form to fill out, and a lot of times accountants are going to hate what I'm about to say. Most people give this to their accountants to do, or their bookkeepers. it's such a simple slip to fill out. It takes me, I don't know, all of about 5 minutes per building to do and
directly on the Régie du Logement, on the tribunal, they have actually, I think, a link
to
prepare
them. Yeah, they're very, very simple to do, and I always encourage people to do them themselves. So I think that and just get them out there, because it's important, because it actually, for people that need it, that information in their taxes so that they get certain credits, it's an important thing to have. When we return, we're going to be looking at this new underused housing tax and how it affects you, even if you're not a foreign investor. You're listening to The Real Estate Show, and this week we're talking to landlords. This is our second segment of our landlord special. Don't forget, you can call the office at 514-680-4674, where Olympia is standing by to take your calls. She's not really standing by, but you get what I'm saying.
Standing by.
That's it. Or you can visit us online at www.nordest.ca. Okay, Marav, so I'm going to, like I did last week, take a step back from the microphone so people don't actually hear my blood boiling for what we're about to talk about here. And I'd like you to explain what our beautiful government has done and put in place with respect to this underused housing tax act. And I'm stepping back here.
Step back.
Step back. I'm away.
Okay. Tie your hands. Yeah. So, again, there's still a lot of clarifications needed. After we finish our first tax filing on May 1st, we will find out more regarding this underused
She's trying to keep from laughing because she knows exactly how I feel right now.
So it is, just to clarify, it is basically a 1% tax on the ownership of vacant or underused housing in Canada.
Interesting.
So, and of course, it's basically anything you own up to December 31st. Now, of course, this applies to non-residents or non-Canadian owners. But the main issue is that even if you're exempt, you're supposed to fill out this form.
And who's exempt from this? Like, if you look at it, I think like secondary homes that are seasonal, there's a whole bunch of exemptions that the government has actually put in place for this. But why would you, if you're exempt from it, why would you actually have to fill this in? Like, what kind of, to me, this sounds like the government is on a fishing expedition here.
Well,
I'm trying to not make it a political show. I don't want to be political here,
I'm being very transparent here.
Yeah.
There isn't enough explanation why you would have to file this even if you're exempt. So technically, a Canadian citizen who's a permanent resident, unless they're included in a separate list, I'll tell you what the separate list is, does not have to file it.
Okay.
But I mean, if you own the property in an incorporation, if you own it in a trust, if you own it in a partnership, there's all kinds of different scenarios where you have to file it, which is the majority of investors. So,
true. Yeah.
So it is causing a little bit of an issue. Yeah, an issue in the sense where, if you have a secondary residence and it's not used enough and it's vacant, does that fall? Like, there's a little bit of a gray zone of understanding what you need to file for. And, we know some investors who have thousands of doors.
And you have to do it for each
property.
Unit.
No, each property.
Not per door?
No, it's not per door, but it's per property. But, some people have, a lot of... what really the whole point of this, or so they say, was for non-residents. They don't want basically people coming in and buying 10, 12 condos in a complex and leaving them vacant and parking their money here if you want.
And I understand that. And I think that it's a great idea when you're, chapeau. If the government was to come out and say, hey, you know what? You're a foreign investor. You're buying an entire floor of a condo building. You're leaving it vacant so that you can park your money here. We're going to tax you on it. Okay? I have zero problem with that. Zero. None. I would be the first one voting for something like that. Okay? You want to charge people 1% because they've parked their money here from wherever? No problem. But when you're going and you're actually attacking Canadians and their rights and interests, we're literally, forget about this. I mean, Canada as a whole is an overly taxed country. Quebec is, I mean, we're not even going to get, go into it. I mean, the amount of taxes that we pay. And then they want to add something like this on top of it.
But now they're saying, we're not taxing you. We just want to know.
Of course.
So you're not paying the 1%.
Yeah, but you know what? The fact that you have to, get an accountant or whoever to fill out these forms, because most people are not going to do this themselves.
Of course.
It is something more that people, Canadians, already, you have inflation up, you have this, you have that, and now all of a sudden they have to pay more.
You have this new expense, this new worry. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, of course, people who have real estate or real estate shares in REITs or publicly traded companies are exempt from this as well.
Of course, yeah.
Any kind of, if you own real estate as a publicly traded company, you're exempt as well. So there's a lot of exemptions. However, the small investor, will be affected. They will be affected. And I'm saying small investor, when I say small, I'm talking about non-big corporations. You're affected because most people will buy under an incorporation. A lot of people have family trusts. It's tough,
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. And there's even some people who say even a regular Canadian citizen, if they don't fall in the incorporation and all that, there's some situations where you still have to file. So I have to get more information about this. And mostly I think once we do that first filing, we'll find out once the government comes back and says, oh, you're missing this, you shouldn't have filed for that, or whatever it is.
And then then there's a penalty, right? Obviously, if you don't file it.
Yes. So if you're supposed to file, even if you're filing for an exemption and you don't file, it's a $5,000 penalty if you're an individual.
Unbelievable.
And a $10,000 penalty if you're a corporation.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's
unbelievable.
I don't know what's the strategy here. I don't know if
a recoup money that they spent, over the last couple of years.
No, I think it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
I think it's we need to know what everybody owns. We need to know where there's money being parked. We need to know
fishing expedition.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it doesn't smell right. I understand if it's for non-residents, absolutely, like you say, but for Canadian citizens, this new, I'm not even going to say this tax, this new filing that you have to do because you're not paying a tax, but you are doing a filing. It's worrisome.
So I'm curious now, and now we're going to go into kind of speculation here, but what happens to those investors, if you will, who, I don't know about this? And I'm sure there's a lot of them that, are living abroad who own real estate here, maybe rented, maybe not, and have zero clue about what they should be doing with this.
I guess at first it's gonna be a while before they start reaching out to everybody who owns real estate who hasn't filed. But again, if you have vacant units, you should do something about it, unless you fall in the exemptions whereby.
But you still have to file it.
Yes, maybe it's being renovated. Maybe it's there's a damage to the property. Maybe it's in a location that's basically it's a seasonal type of property. So there's exceptions for the vacancy for you not to have to pay the 1% tax. But again, you have to really have an accountant taking care of your things. A lot of people still file their own taxes. They don't use accountants if it's, for a few little units. So I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about our fellow real estate investors. I won't lie to you. It's just because, there's...
Well, look, even for myself, okay, so I'm in the business. I'm in the mortgage business. I'm in the real estate business. I'm in the commercial real estate business, okay? I have the real estate show, right? I mean, my whole life revolves around this. And if it wasn't for me speaking to a friend of mine 2 weeks ago, who said to me, I was like, how you doing? He's like, oh man, I just had to fill out like a whole bunch of these, forms for the underutilized housing tax. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, you got to fill it out before the end of April and submit it to the government. Otherwise you get... And as soon as he said that, I went, oh my God, I completely had forgotten about it.
Yeah, it's the accounting firm that reached out to me to mention it just because they know that we have real estate. And again, if you don't have an accountant, it's a problem.
You're not going to end up
You're not going to know about it.
Don't forget, guys, you can call us at the office at 514-680-4674, or you can visit us online at www.nordest.ca. When we come back, we're going to be looking at rental vacancy rates across Canada and in Montreal. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to The Real Estate Show, and today we're doing our Landlord Special, Part 2. You like that?
I like that.
You could call us at the office at 514- Oh my God, I forgot the number at the office. 514-680-4674. Remember that time when I was on the air? This is going back to the dollars and cents.
I know exactly what story you're
Right? You remember what I'm... Okay, so our phone number at the office is 680-4674. And our old phone number at home was 1631, 680-1631. So the whole show, I gave our house number. And you were listening and you were like, oh no.
I remember that.
Anyways. It's good to see that my, goofiness is actually consistent throughout the years. Oh. It's not getting worse. It's not improving.
You think it's not getting worse. Okay, that's cute.
Okay, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the numbers.
CMHC came out with the numbers for vacancy rates.
Yes.
So first of all, across Canada, it dropped, of course. We see it dropped from 3.1 to 1.9% vacancy.
Wow.
Rate.
Across Canada.
Okay. And
that
in Montreal,
low.
in Montreal, it dropped from 3.7 to 2.3%. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's really, really not a lot of supply for renters. They're not building fast enough. So they're saying even though there's a lot of new builds, and a lot of new builds you'll notice are actual rentals. They're not new condos. A lot of them are rentals. It's not being built fast enough.
Plus we have, there's immigration. We have
students. Students are coming back in person.
Absolutely.
So think of the amount of students in universities that need places to stay. Students are back. Immigration is up. There's a lot of factors that affect, and of course, the affordability of housing. So a lot of people who were thinking of buying this year decided to rent or stay renting. So again, that usually these folks would come out of the rental market into the buying market, and they can't. So again, not enough supply. So there's a lot of factors.
Yeah. Wow. That's, look, if you look at, if I go back in time, and the last time that I saw vacancy rates at this number, I remember I was literally putting up a sign, and I didn't have a chance to get off of the ladder. I kid you not. I would put the sign up on my building. I wouldn't have a chance to get off the ladder. I would have 3 people at the bottom of the ladder saying to me, how much is it? What's the size? What's going on? Blah, 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 blah.
I remember.
You remember that?
That was 2001 or 2002.
I had people offering me double the rent. I had people offering me to pay, put deposits. I mean, it was crazy.
It was
lineups.
To the point. I remember they would even offer for you not to paint, not to do anything.
Don't do anything.
We'll go in.
We're going to go in. We're going to take care of everything for you.
I remember that. Yeah.
Wow, that's insane. So, and it was basically exactly this. And I still have the newspaper article from back in the day when the vacancy rates were this, and it was from the Montreal Gazette. And I remember I had clipped it out, and I had it because I was living exactly that. There was literally lineups around the and we're seeing it right now. You put up a sign. Properties are just gone instantly in a snap, right?
Yeah, the big people affected will be the low income renters.
Yeah.
It's a big problem because when it's such a big demand, it creates a market where, rental increases go up faster, etc. So, it's harder to find.
I think that a big part of it is also, obviously the supply of the rental units is not as big. There's not enough right now. But there's also not that turnover of people going from renter to owner. So there's a generation right now, and I pray that I'm not going to insult anyone with what I'm about to say. So please don't misunderstand anything. Mirav, don't shake your head. Don't worry. Okay, I'm going to be good.
That's the
But
goofiness we were talking about.
there is a no. I have a filter. My filter's there, but there is a generation. There is a between certain ages where they're kind of in a transitionary period. They're taking longer to buy those properties because it's not no fault of their own. Like, I mean, it's because the government's rules have changed so much. Like you're when you apply for a mortgage, you have to be stress tested. You no longer have long amortizations. You're capped out at 25 or 30 years. You have to save up good amounts of down payment. That wasn't the case before, right? So back in the day, the government had done things to stimulate not only the housing market, but to encourage people to transition from renter to owner. Right now, it's the opposite. The government is doing everything that they possibly can to keep people exactly where they are. So people are not selling their houses because they can't upgrade. People are not transitioning from renter to owner because they can't afford it, and not because interest rates are up. It's just, and not because house prices are up.
The mortgage rules, the government policies,
the policies, all of that has changed. So there's a whole slew of things that's occurred that's basically preventing people from transitioning from renter to owner.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, I'm saying back in the day, 20 years ago plus, 25 years old, you were usually able to already look at buying something.
And that number over the years has gone higher and higher and higher.
And a family earning a $60,000 income back in the day, I sound like I'm aging myself here, but you can buy a decent house. Now, even $100,000 family income is not enough. We've seen even $150,000 not being enough to buy a decent home to live in. So it's a problem. The way that mortgage rules have affected the qualifying, it's really a problem.
So the scary, or I'll say the scary thing, if we look at the last 15 years, okay, so let's go back to when I originally became a broker. I would have people in their mid-20s, like you said. They would come to see me. They would be working have a good paying job, and they would have some money saved up, and they would say, okay, we want to buy our first condo. We want to buy our first house, whatever. And they would go into that, they would transition. Today, I have first-time home buyers in their 40s, in their 50s, because they needed that extra time to actually save up that money for the down payments, or to get that better paying job or whatever, so that they can actually qualify.
Or to pay down their debts.
Yeah. And what's happening is that line, as interest rates go up and house prices continue to go up. I mean, people think that house prices have gone down. House prices haven't gone down. They're the same, if not
Quebec,
higher.
it's the same.
As things are becoming more expensive for them, that line gets pushed year after year over, And it's sad because it's actually, in some cases, cheaper for you to go and buy a property than it is for you to rent. But because of the way that the system is designed, it's becoming more difficult. So therefore, you have these crazy, low vacancies. Why? Because people can't. Oh my God! I made it a political show.
Let's go vote. All this to say, there is a reason behind this low vacancy rate, and we hope that the policies will change to make it easier for average families to buy. Everybody wants the average family to be able to afford. It should not be exclusive to people earning a certain amount or saving up a certain amount. So I think that's the most important point.
That's why you need to call us at the office so that we can make sure that we put you on the right track to actually take care of yourself and buy yourself
give the right number this time.
Yeah, so you can reach us at the office at 514-680-4674, or you can visit us online again at www.nordest.ca. Guys, till next week, have a blessed week. Love you all.
Northeast is the call to make. Whether you're buying your first home or you're a seasoned investor, Terry Kalakos and his team of mortgage and real estate brokers can help. It's simple and it's free. Make your dreams come true. Call Northeast.